Sveiki, aš Remy ir čia Radikalus smalsumas. Kasdien į Žemę nukrenta apie 100 tonų kosmoso kūnelių, tačiau jie tokie mažyčiai, kad sunyksta Žemės atmosferoje ir jų visai nepastebime. Krateriai Žemės paviršiuje išduoda, kad kadaise čia krito ir milžiniški asteroidai, kurių vienas, manoma, net išnaikino dinozaurus. O koks šansas, kad asteroidas dabar sunaikins žmoniją? Tiek NASA, tiek Europos kosmoso agentūra nuolat stebi dangų ir atranda naujų asteroidų. Skaičiuojama, kad Saulės sistemoje jų yra milijonai, nors atrasta dar tik maža dalis. Vieni asteroidai skrieja savo keliais ir mums visiškai nepavojingi, o kiti turi tikimybę susidurti su Žeme. Apie tai, kas nutiktų mūsų planetai, jei jos link skrietų milžiniškas asteroidas ir kodėl reikia domėtis grėsmėmis iš kosmoso, pasikalbėjau su tarptautinės asteroidų dienos sumanytoja, stratege Danica Remy ir asteroidų mokslininku, planetologu Patricku Micheliu.
So the problem is, actually, asteroids are both our friends and our enemies in a sense. So they are our friends first because they are the best tracers of our solar system history, because contrary to planets which are very big and therefore their material was cooked by heating processes, asteroids are small enough that their composition is basically recording the original composition of the solar nebula in which the planet formed. So if you want to have the right recipe to make planets, you need to start with the right ingredients. And these ingredients are lost in planets because they have been hidden. But in asteroids, which are very small, these ingredients are still there. So that's why we study asteroids. Moreover, some of them contain organic material. And what we want to check is whether they carried all the elements to Earth that allowed life to emerge. So this is why they are our friends. On the other hand, because they impact Earth, they can also be considered our enemies. But this is a risk which is probably the least likely natural risk if you compare with the tsunamis, volcanoes, earthquakes that even on my lifetime I can experience. Asteroid risk is a very low frequency event, but it has high consequences. And so, as you have said, we see that we now deal with things which were totally unexpected. And this is a problem, is that when you have a low probability thing, but which has high consequences, it's better to be prepared before we need it. Otherwise, we are facing something unprepared and the consequences are too high. So the advantage of asteroids is that we have the knowledge, the tools, and the possibility to prepare us against an impact, to mitigate an impact, and to be prepared well in advance before we need it. And we know what are the actions to be done, and we are currently actually working on that. So that's why I think this risk that asteroids represent is actually something that we consider as an opportunity. We have now the opportunity to take care of it and to be prepared much before we need it, because we need to emphasize that so far we have no known asteroid that is really a threat for the next decade. So there is no reason to be scared. However, we know that on the long term this risk will concretize, and therefore it's best to be prepared before it happens.
Danica, what is Asteroid Day and how does it help the cause?
So we created Asteroid Day to really excite and inspire the world about asteroids, because as Patricku Micheliu said, they present both a risk and an opportunity for humanity. So when we launched Asteroid Day, we launched with what's called the 100X Declaration, which is our call to action to the world to accelerate the rate of asteroid discovery through funding of telescopes and technology, so that we don't go the way of the dinosaurs. As Patrick said, it's it's infrequent, but it's also something that will help our knowledge and understanding of where we came from, as well as protecting our planet, which we think is a good idea.
Mm-hmm. Brian May, who is one of the ambassadors of the Asteroid Day, said that humans are living on the borrowed time. What does it mean to you, Danica?
So what it means to me is that we ought to get to work to find the asteroids. It's not like it's not possible for us to find the majority of the asteroids that would come near Earth and might have a negative impact on our planet. And so accelerating the rate of asteroid discovery is our primary call to action, and is why we started Asteroid Day with Brian May, along with my other co-founder, Rusty Schweikart, Apollo 9 astronaut, and German filmmaker Grig Richters. We think that getting the world to be as excited about asteroids as Patricku Micheliu is actually a good thing. And so June 30th is Asteroid Day, and is now a United Nations Day of Education and Awareness. And it's celebrated all over the world, including in Lithuania. And these are independently organized events that provide an opportunity for the museums and the scientists and the teachers to present to their community about what they know about asteroids and meteorites.
Patrick, there seems to be that recently there's an increase in the number of reports of asteroids coming close to Earth. Is it true, or is it like because the techniques is getting better, the tools to scan the sky is getting better, for example?
Yeah, so there effectively. So first of all, I want to say that Asteroid Day is super important and really cool, because when you talk about asteroids, you can talk about them from many sides. Because basically, as we said, they represent the best tracer of our solar system history. They represent a risk. They can be used as resources. And basically, if you want to address all these objectives, you need the same knowledge. So you can talk about asteroids on one way, but in any case, everything is related. You need to characterize these objects. You need to make the inventory, and we are doing that. And because we are doing the inventory, even though there is no dedicated program to discover asteroids, most of the discoveries are made by basically two big telescopes, which are the Catalina Sky Survey in Arizona and the Pan-STARRS in Hawaii. But they are dedicated to astrophysics. But because they are very big, of course, they make also a lot of discoveries of these objects which pass in the field of view. And thanks to that, we increase the inventory. And this is why now we see more close approaches of asteroids, simply because we have a way to observe them better and more efficiently. So there is no increase in the rate of approaches. In fact, we know that during the last 4 billion years, the flux of impactors in the inner solar system has been kept more or less constant. And we know that thanks to the moon. Because the moon is, contrary to the Earth, has no atmosphere, has no ocean, has no tectonic plates. So basically, the moon records all the craters that it experiences over time, while on Earth they disappear, they are removed, or in water they make sploof. So we don't see a crater. So by counting the craters on the moon, we know that we have a constant flux of impactors. So there is no increase. It's just the fact that we are more and more capable of either detecting an asteroid before it comes close to the Earth, or afterwards know that there was an asteroid that passed close to the Earth. And that's not a risk. That's actually, again, an opportunity, because when they come close to the Earth, we can observe them with another technique, which is radar techniques. Usually when you observe an asteroid, you use a telescope, optical telescope, but if it comes close, you can use radars. And for some reason, with radars, you can access more information about them, in particular their shape, and also the radars allow us to better know their trajectory. Mm-hmm. So we are looking for these asteroids that come close to the Earth, because we can access very precious information that we cannot have with optical telescopes. So this is very exciting, actually, and not scary.
Mm-hmm. Patrick, how many asteroids do we know of now, and how many of them has the potential to be dangerous to our planet?
Yeah, so most of the asteroids are in what we call the asteroid belt, which is between Mars and Jupiter. The largest object in this belt is Ceres, 950 kilometers in size. Then the number increases with decreasing size. We estimate that we have 1 million objects larger than 1 kilometer. But then you have a subpopulation, which is the one that you are probably interested in, called the near-Earth object population. So these are the objects which do not evolve on a circular trajectory around Mars and Jupiter, but they have a trajectory which is elongated enough that they cross the trajectory of the Earth. And actually, most of them come from the asteroid belt, because in this belt, you have collisions occurring, and during collisions between asteroids, some fragments are generated, which are sometimes placed in unstable trajectory that make them pass from a circular trajectory around Mars and Jupiter to an elongated one that crosses the orbit of the Earth. And in this near-Earth object population, we estimate that we have 1,000 objects larger than 1 kilometer in size, which is the size above which an asteroid that impacts Earth basically makes damage over the whole globe. And these, we discovered more than 90% of them, which was the goal that the US Congress declared in 1998. So now we have reached this goal, and now we want to detect all the asteroids larger than 150 meters in size, which is a threshold above which you have a regional damage at the level of a region or a country. And for them, unfortunately, we know maximum 30%, and we estimate that there are about 10,000. So the next goal is to reach, to make the inventory of these objects, and that should be done. It can be done from the ground, but it will take decades with big telescopes. If we want to do it faster, we have to go to space. And fortunately, US Congress is on the way to finance a mission called ENIO Surveyor Mission, which will be a space telescope that can do the job in 10 years. So in principle, in the next decade, we'll be able to identify all these objects and therefore really understand and check whether there is one that is threatening us. Because as I said, for now, all the known asteroids are basically represent no risk over the few next decades. But we want to know for the one that we don't know. And fortunately, in the next decade, when this mission is launched, we'll be able to really know whether there is a risk or not on the short term.
Now let's get back in time. What happened on the day that when the giant dinosaur-killing asteroid hit Earth?
So that was about a 10-kilometer size estimated asteroid that impacted in Mexico. So the crater is about 180 kilometers in size. You cannot see it, it's underground. And of course, when an impact like this happens, this is absolutely enormous energy. And therefore, the asteroid impact the Earth, it generates a huge crater. And of course, all the material that was in the crater is ejected in the atmosphere. And there is so much material that basically it starts to go over the globe, orbiting around the globe, and therefore hides the light from the sun. And therefore, the Earth is totally dark, and there is no photosynthesis, and all the living species and vegetables cannot grow anymore. And unfortunately, all the living species died by the ones that are close to the impact point are burnt or pulverized. But then for the ones which are on the other side of the globe, they die little by little because they cannot be fed and see the light anymore. So it's not necessarily a sudden process like everybody is killed at once, but it's actually less nice than that.
So besides the crater, what other evidence do scientists have regarding the event, and are there any remains of the asteroid left maybe somewhere?
You know, I would love that, because I'd like to have the material that did that to understand where it came from. Unfortunately, we don't have that, but we have several evidence. So what we have are called, for instance, tectites. Tectites are glassy material that basically are produced when you eject very quickly something into the atmosphere. Then it experiences very, very extreme temperature processes. And it makes these kind of glasses which are not crystallized, amorphous, and which are typical of what happens when you eject quickly a material from an impact. And we identified some of these tectites which are dated at 65 million years ago. Moreover, in the layer on the Earth that correspond to this epoch, we have a peak of abundance of iridium. Iridium is one of these rare metals which come from, necessarily is not produced on Earth, so it comes from, it's extraterrestrial. And we have an abundance which is very high at this epoch. So demonstrate that there was a big asteroid that came at this epoch to bring this material. And then we have the crater. And maybe we have others, I don't have them in mind. But we have several pieces of evidence that really demonstrate that there was an impact. I know there is a controversy whether the dinosaurs were killed by an impact or something else, volcanoes, etc. For sure, there was an impact. That cannot be falsified, but there could also have triggered volcanoes. As I said, the process of extinction of the dinosaur was not instantaneous. So there is a sequence of events which are most of them related to the impact, and that made the job basically. And that's fortunate for us because we needed the dinosaurs to be dead for human to emerge. So.
And I thought I would just show you a couple of things here. Here is a meteorite from Reese Crater, which is in Germany. And so they come in all, as Patrick was saying, part of what we need to do is characterize them. So this one is, very stony and grainy. And then this is an asteroid that came from the Barringer Crater in Arizona. That was an asteroid impact 50,000 years ago, and it's super heavy. So when you hold it, it's very, very heavy. So it's made of different things. And then Patrick was talking about the glass, and so this is a meteorite that was created when an asteroid impacted. And then finally, the ones that I think are really exciting, and Patrick can probably explain them, is this one. So it's got all these beautiful striations in them, if you can see them. And I always forget how to explain how this one came to be, Patrick.
This is typical of some iron meteorites. And in fact, there is a story about iron meteorites. We have a very large abundance of iron meteorites, and yet we have a lack of evidence of metallic asteroids. We have too many identified metallic asteroids compared to the abundance of iron meteorites. So we have a mystery. And the other thing is that the first weapons that were built on Earth by our ancestors come from iron meteorites. Because, the iron first was brought to Earth when it was born. The Earth was molten. And all the iron, basically, which is the heavier element, went into the core to form the core of the Earth. And all the elements that are chemically, they like iron, went into the core with the iron. We call them siderophile elements. So the platinum, the gold, etc., went all into the core. And then the Earth became colder, it solidified, and therefore all the gold, the platinum, and the iron, which is now in the mantle, has been brought afterwards by asteroids. So when you have a piece of gold or platinum on a jewel, it comes from an asteroid. So I think that's very interesting.
Wow, that's beautiful. Scientists have thought of methods of ways to destroy or change the direction of an upcoming asteroids. What are the ways that have the most potential to protect us from a gigantic celestial body?
Yeah, so
Patrick is working on a couple of really exciting missions, so he should talk about it.
Okay, and you can complement, of course, Danica. So as we said, the impact risk is something which we can predict and prevent by reasonable means that we are now implementing. So that's the positive thing about it. So predicting means making the inventory, and we already explained this part. And preventing means effectively have some deflection techniques which are basically ready to go. So there are many deflection techniques that are published on paper, but there is, of course, as always, a gap between theory and practice. So the most promising one, I would say, which are the ones that rely on the less number of hypotheses that you need to design your mission, are the kinetic impactor and the gravity tractor. So the kinetic impactor, basically, the concept is just you send a projectile on the asteroid, and when the projectile impacts the asteroid, it deflects it from the trajectory. So basically, I push you from where you are, and therefore I remove you from where you are. So that's the impact, the kinetic impactor. And this technique will be tested because we have the great luck to have 2 missions which are now under development, the DART mission by NASA and the ERA mission by ESA. Another technique which is probably worth also validating is called the gravity tractor. So the gravity tractor is totally different. In this case, you don't touch the asteroid. You just come close to it with a satellite, and you use the mass of the satellite to attract the asteroid with Newton's law. So you just attract it by the mass of the satellite, and this is a very small deflection, but if you do it long enough in advance, it's enough to avoid the Earth. And the advantage of this technique compared to the kinetic impactor is that when you make an impact, you can never know for sure what will be the outcome because it depends on the internal structure of the object. If the object is soft, for instance, it will absorb a higher part of the energy and you will deflect it less than if the object is very hard. And that you don't know it in advance. The gravity tractor, the advantage is that you know the law of gravity. So if you know the mass of your satellite and you come close enough to the asteroid, you can deflect almost deterministically the asteroid. So you control better. But it can only work for very small asteroids because of course, the larger the asteroid, the larger the satellite you need to launch.
Patrick, regarding the techniques, while I was visiting ESA, I was told by a couple of planetary scientists who were working with NEO objects that we have no known technique that could destroy or change the direction of an asteroid if it's really big. For example, bigger than, 1 kilometer in diameter. Is it still true, or now maybe we have techniques that could protect us?
No, I think it's still true. I mean, all the techniques that I talk about are for objects which are of the size of several hundred of meters at most. Gravity tractor, even maybe smaller than several hundred of meters, we can debate, but not 1 kilometer. 1 kilometer, the object is so big that unless you do it centuries in advance, you need a lot of energy to deflect. Destroying, we are not super interested in destroying because you never know how many fragments you create. And instead of dealing with one object, you deal with many fragments, you don't solve the problem. And for the more than 90% of the 1 kilometer object that we know, known is threatening us. So we don't need, in principle, to already think about testing a technique that is valid for them because we know we won't need it for many thousands of years.
Patrick, my last question, are there any significant asteroids coming close by Earth in the upcoming month, maybe this year, in 2020?
Not that I know of, but in the next decade, I would mention at least one, which is called Apophis. It's about 400 meters in size, and this will be the first asteroid that we can see by naked eyes from Earth, because it will come at a distance which is closer than 32,000 kilometers from Earth, which means below the trajectories of a geostationary artificial satellite, so super close to Earth. And therefore, this is something super interesting, and actually we are working, and I'm organizing a workshop with somebody called Rick Binzel in the US in November about this particular asteroid, because we think that we cannot miss this opportunity to make a space mission that would visit Apophis at that time and see whether the passage to the Earth, which is this time really, really, really close, may not basically make the asteroid shake. And that would be a way for us to study the behavior of the surface of an asteroid when passing close to the Earth. Because you need to understand something which is for me super fascinating, is the fact that these asteroids are really new world, new territories. When you arrive on an asteroid, and I have the big honor and luck to be part of the space missions which are currently on their asteroids, you really feel like Christophe Colomb with other Indians. Because you feel like discovering a new territory in conditions which are so different than the conditions on Earth in terms of attraction that intuitively you cannot really guess in advance very well what you will find. and not only about the properties by themselves, but also about how those properties behave against external actions.
Patrick, you said that it's beautiful and fascinating, Apophis, the asteroid, but let me just double check with you. Isn't it dangerous at all to us?
No, Apophis is not dangerous at all. When it was discovered in 2004, there was a probability of impact in 2029, which was removed very quickly. And then there was another one in 2036, and it was removed in 2013 because Apophis came close to the Earth at that time, and so that radar observations could be done and allowed us to refine the trajectory and recompute the impact probability and rule out the chance of collision with the Earth in 2036, which shows that the radars are super important for us because they allow to measure the orbit with a much higher accuracy than any other technique. So that's why I say again, when there is an asteroid that comes very close to the Earth, we should feel lucky because that allows us to refine its trajectory. And so for Apophis, we know for sure that there is absolutely no threat in 2029. So if you are in the correct location on Earth and you can lie on a transat and just observe the sky, just be excited because it will be a great moment actually.
Well, that's good news. Thank you both for your answers and your time.
Thank you.
It was great being with you.
Už šią laidą dėkojame verslininkui Vladui Lašui. Ačiū, kad žiūrėjote ir likite su Delfi televizija.